Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us for the second part of our story. Let's jump right back in. If you have not watched part 1, please go and check it out. Link is given in the description. As Susie struggled to maintain control over both Vincent and Gladwin, her confidence began to waver. The cracks in her carefully constructed facade were beginning to show, and Vincent was ready to exploit every weakness. The stage was set for a confrontation that would change everything. Vincent's resolve grew stronger with every passing day. He realized that his silence unnerved Susie more than any confrontation ever could. Her manipulations and veiled threats were attempts to regain control, but Vincent knew better than to give her that power. Instead, he became colder, more calculated, and less predictable. Every action he took was deliberate, designed to protect himself while subtly destabilizing her. Susie's attempts to engage him in meaningful conversations over the phone were met with polite indifference. Vincent kept their calls short, citing his work trip as an excuse. "I'm busy," he'd say, his tone neutral. "We'll talk when I get back." Susie, used to his attentive nature, found his distance unsettling. She tried to pry, asking about his meetings and colleagues, but Vincent gave her nothing. Meanwhile, Vincent worked tirelessly behind the scenes. He spent his days consulting with his lawyer and securing his assets. He transferred funds from their joint accounts into private ones and ensured that any properties in both their names were legally tied to his financial contributions. Vincent also began gathering more evidence, carefully cataloging every detail that could work in his favor. Each chat log, financial record, and photograph from Susie's hidden phone was meticulously documented and stored in a secure location. Despite his composure, the weight of the situation bore heavily on Vincent. There were moments when the betrayal felt like a physical wound, a sharp pain that refused to heal. He thought about the love he had poured into their marriage, the trust he had so freely given her. How could someone he loved so deeply betray him so completely? Yet, in his pain, Vincent found strength. Susie's lies might have shattered his heart, but they would not break his spirit. Susie, on the other hand, was growing increasingly paranoid. Vincent's aloofness, combined with the supposed burglary at their home, had left her on edge. She began checking her belongings obsessively, scanning through her messages for any signs that Gladwin might have exposed her. Her calls with Gladwin grew more frantic, filled with arguments and accusations. "You need to back off," she told him one evening. "This isn't just about you anymore." Gladwin's patience had worn thin. "You can't string both of us along forever," he snapped. "You think Vincent's going to stay in the dark forever? You're playing with fire, Susie." The tension between Susie and Gladwin mirrored the growing chasm between her and Vincent. She was fighting on two fronts, struggling to maintain control over two men who were slipping through her grasp. Vincent, however, remained calm and calculated. He knew that her growing desperation would lead to mistakes, and he was ready to capitalize on every one of them. The day of Vincent's return was marked by a palpable tension in the air. Susie had spent the morning cleaning the house, trying to restore a sense of normalcy. She had planned to greet him with a warm smile and a comforting dinner, hoping to dispel the coldness that had crept into their relationship. But Vincent had no intention of playing along. When Vincent walked through the door, his demeanor was different. He was quiet, but not in a way that suggested fatigue. Instead, there was an edge to him, a controlled intensity that Susie couldn't quite place. She greeted him cautiously, watching his every move as he set down his bag and removed his coat. "How was your trip?" she asked, forcing a smile. "It was fine," Vincent replied curtly, not meeting her eyes. He moved past her and into the living room, where he took a seat and gestured for her to join him. "We need to talk." Susie froze, her heart skipping a beat. The way he said it, calm and deliberate, sent a chill down her spine. She sat down across from him, her smile faltering. "What's wrong?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Vincent reached into his briefcase and pulled out the divorce papers that had arrived weeks earlier. He placed them on the table between them, his eyes locking onto hers. "Care to explain this?" he said, his voice cold. Susie's face drained of color. For a moment, she was silent, her mind racing to come up with an explanation. I can explain," she stammered. This isn't what it looks like." "Oh, it's exactly what it looks like," Vincent said, his tone sharp. He pulled out more documents, photographs, chat logs, and financial records. "And this? And this? Do you think I'm blind, Susie? Do you think I wouldn't find out?" Susie's shock quickly gave way to defiance. "You've been spying on me?" she said, her voice rising. "Invading my privacy?" Vincent slammed his hand on the table, making her flinch. "Don't you dare turn this around on me," he said, his voice laced with fury. "You lied to me. You've been lying to me since the day we met." The confrontation escalated into a shouting match, with Susie alternately denying the accusations and attempting to justify her actions. "You were never supposed to find out," she cried at one point, tears streaming down her face. "I did it to protect us." "Protect us?" Vincent repeated, laughing bitterly. "You did it to protect yourself. Don't pretend this was about anything other than your greed and your lies." The argument reached its peak when Vincent stood and pointed toward the door. "Get out," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. "You're not welcome here anymore." Vincent's command for Susie to leave his home marked the beginning of a grueling legal battle that would stretch for months. As she stood in the doorway that evening, her face a mixture of shock and defiance, Vincent felt a brief pang of guilt, but it was quickly replaced by resolve. This wasn't just about reclaiming his home. It was about reclaiming his dignity and protecting what he had worked so hard to build. Susie, however, was not a woman who would walk away quietly. The very next day, she filed a legal notice, citing emotional abuse and claiming a significant share of Vincent's assets. She listed herself as a joint holder in his bank accounts and properties, painting herself as a victim of neglect who had contributed equally to their marital success. For Susie, this was not just a fight to save face. It was a fight for financial survival. Vincent, prepared for this eventuality, handed over the evidence he had meticulously collected to his lawyer. Photographs, chat logs, bank statements, and property records painted a damning picture of Susie's deception. His lawyer assured him that the evidence was strong, but also warned him about the challenges ahead. "She'll play the victim," the lawyer said, "and the courts tend to favor the vulnerable party in divorce cases, especially when there are financial assets involved." The courtroom became a battleground. Susie arrived with a legal team that was as aggressive as she was cunning. They filed motions accusing Vincent of emotional neglect and financial control, claiming that Susie had been forced to manipulate the situation to secure her future. They painted her actions as a desperate attempt to survive in a marriage where she felt powerless. Vincent's lawyer countered every claim with evidence. The hidden phone, the explicit photos, the messages between Susie and Gladwin, and the financial transactions all proved her duplicity. But Susie's team was relentless, challenging the authenticity of the evidence and accusing Vincent of fabricating the materials. The proceedings dragged on, with each side presenting witnesses and testimonies that only deepened the emotional toll on Vincent. For Vincent, the battle wasn't just legal. It was personal. Sitting in the courtroom, hearing Susie twist the truth, was a constant reminder of her betrayal. She spoke with practiced sincerity, her tears flowing at the right moments, convincing many in the courtroom of her victimhood. At times, even Vincent doubted himself, questioning if he had missed something, if he had pushed her to this point. But then he would remember the lies, the manipulation, and the way she had coldly planned to use him for her own gain. Outside the courtroom, Vincent's life felt like it was in shambles. Friends and colleagues whispered about the case, some expressing support while others questioned his role in the conflict. His reputation, once untouchable, had been stained by the public nature of the divorce. Yet, amidst the chaos, Vincent found moments of clarity. His resolve to see the battle through grew stronger each day. As the months dragged on, Vincent began to see cracks in Susie's facade. Her legal team struggled to counter the mounting evidence, and her claims of victimhood began to lose credibility. Witnesses testified to her manipulative nature, and financial experts highlighted the discrepancies in her accounts. The turning point came when the court demanded Susie provide evidence of her alleged contributions to Vincent's wealth. She faltered, unable to substantiate her claims. Despite his growing advantage, the fight was far from easy. Vincent had to make concessions to expedite the process, agreeing to part with a portion of his wealth to avoid further delays. He knew that dragging the case out any longer would only drain him emotionally and financially. In the end, the court awarded Susie a settlement, significant, but far less than she had demanded. For Vincent, the financial loss was painful, but it paled in comparison to the relief of finally being free. The day the divorce was finalized, he walked out of the courtroom feeling lighter, as if a weight he had carried for years had been lifted. Susie, on the other hand, left with her settlement, but without the satisfaction of victory. Her reputation had been tarnished, her schemes exposed. The courtroom doors closed behind Vincent with a resounding finality, marking the end of a tumultuous chapter of his life. The divorce was finalized, and while the financial losses stung, several properties and a significant portion of his bank accounts had gone to Susie. The relief of being free from her web of lies far outweighed any monetary cost. Vincent had fought for his dignity, and though battered, he had emerged victorious. Walking out of the courthouse that day, Vincent felt a strange mix of exhaustion and liberation. The battle had drained him physically, emotionally, and financially, but it had also taught him about his own resilience. He had endured months of public scrutiny, false accusations, and sleepless nights, yet here he stood, ready to rebuild. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of Susie's manipulation lift from his shoulders. Life after the divorce was not easy. The scars of betrayal lingered, and Vincent found himself replaying the events in his mind, wondering how he had missed the signs. Every corner of his house seemed to carry a memory of her, every piece of furniture a reminder of the life they had once shared. It wasn't just the loss of a wife. It was the loss of the illusion he had built around her. He had loved her deeply, trusted her implicitly, and in return, she had betrayed him in the most profound way. But Vincent was not the type to wallow in self-pity. He threw himself into his work, determined to restore his financial standing and regain his sense of purpose. Colleagues, who had watched his ordeal from the sidelines, marveled at his resilience. Despite everything, Vincent maintained his professionalism, proving to himself and others that he was stronger than his circumstances. Meanwhile, Susie's life took a different turn. The settlement provided her with financial stability, but at the cost of her reputation. Word of her deceit had spread, leaving her ostracized by many of her friends and acquaintances. Even Gladwin, her ex-husband and one-time accomplice, severed ties with her. He, too, had grown tired of the chaos she brought into his life. Susie, once so confident and manipulative, now found herself alone, her schemes having left her with money but little else. For Vincent, the aftermath of the divorce became a period of reflection. He realized that his marriage to Susie had not only been a lesson in betrayal, but also a lesson in his own strength. He had faced the darkest parts of himself, his anger, his pain, and his doubts, and come out stronger. Slowly, he began to rebuild not just his life, but also his sense of trust in others. Months turned into years, and Vincent's life slowly began to heal. The wounds Susie had inflicted on his heart, his finances, and his trust faded into scars, visible but no longer painful. Each scar was a reminder of the lessons he had learned and the strength he had found within himself. The experience had changed him in profound ways. Vincent became more cautious, no longer taking people at face value. He learned to trust his instincts and value transparency in his relationships. The betrayal had hardened him, but it had not made him bitter. Instead, he chose to view it as an opportunity for growth. If he could survive what Susie had put him through, he could survive anything. Vincent's career flourished as he channeled his energy into his work. He rebuilt his financial stability with a laser-sharp focus, earning back much of what he had lost. His colleagues admired his resilience, often seeking his advice on navigating challenges, both personal and professional. Vincent became a mentor to those around him, his story a powerful reminder of the strength required to overcome adversity. Though his life was back on track, Vincent remained cautious about entering into another relationship. The thought of opening his heart again was daunting. He questioned whether he could ever fully trust someone after what he had been through. But as time passed, he began to realize that not everyone was like Susie. There were still people in the world who valued honesty and loyalty, and he deserved a chance at genuine happiness. It was during a charity event hosted by his company that Vincent met Amelia. She was a kind-hearted woman with a warm smile and an aura of sincerity that immediately drew him in. Unlike Susie, Amelia didn't wear a mask of perfection. She was open about her struggles, her past, and her dreams. For Vincent, this honesty was a breath of fresh air. Their relationship blossomed slowly. Vincent took his time, ensuring that their bond was built on trust and mutual respect. Amelia, understanding Vincent's past, was patient and supportive. She never pushed him, allowing him to open up at his own pace. Over time, Vincent found himself letting go of the walls he had built around his heart. As he stood beside Amelia one evening, watching the sunset from his newly rebuilt home, Vincent felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. The betrayal, the pain, and the battles with Susie had all led him to this moment. It wasn't just about finding love again. It was about finding himself. Vincent's journey became an inspiration to those around him. He often spoke about the importance of resilience, the power of self-worth, and the need to never lose hope. He had been through hell and back, but he had emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever to live a life filled with meaning and authenticity. Though Susie's betrayal would always be a part of his story, it no longer defined him. It was a chapter in his life, not the whole book. And as Vincent looked toward the future, hand in hand with Amelia, he knew that his best days were still ahead. If you enjoyed this story of resilience and redemption, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Lost Love Mystery. Your support helps us bring you more heartfelt tales like this one. Have a story of your own? Feel free to share it with us. We'd love to hear from you. Stay tuned for more stories that touch the soul and remind us of the strength in every heart.